of would-be jihadis and to undermine the extremist ideology that leads to destruction and death. The government believes the key lies in engaging with moderate Muslims and getting mosques and madrasas, Islamic schools, to play their part. This homegrown threat from British jihadis like the 7/7 bombers is unlike anything that we've ever seen before. Stopping the enemy within has forced the government to take a hard look at the deep divisions within our multicultural society.
What we've done since 2005 is redoubled our efforts in getting close to the neighbourhoods where Muslim communities are in preponderance. So we're much closer to our Muslim communities than we ever were.
There's no doubt that Prevent does squarely target Britain's Muslims, but it's a high-risk strategy. The biggest risk of all is alienating the majority of Muslims whose support is needed for its success.
There's palpable anger in the Muslim community with the Prevent agenda, because what it does is it criminalises an entire community, it demonises an entire community. Now, any policy that treats an entire community as a suspect community cannot achieve what the government says it wants to with the Prevent programme, and that's win the battle for hearts and minds.
But the police say they need more information from Britain's Muslims in order to tackle terrorism. It's a delicate issue because police have often been perceived to be heavy-handed and insensitive, the result being widespread mistrust.
This year in Manchester, when they just broke into a person's house, broke the doors down, pulled him away for questioning, and end of the day, nothing came out of it. So if you can pull somebody out of the house, when nothing comes out, I expect them to come on the television and apologize to that person for doing that.
The police.
The police, because that person has to live in the community, you know, and imagine his neighbors and friends seeing him being pulled out of the house.
She's been doing the community work.
These women from Blackburn have been invited by Lancashire Police to take part in a trust-building exercise, and there's a free lunch. The men have a separate session. There'll be a role-playing exercise designed to show the Muslim community what a tough job it is fighting terrorism and how difficult are the decisions the police have to make. They will be taken step by step through a terrorist incident in the fictional town of Sandford.
For the next 2 hours today, you're all going to be Sandford Counter-Terrorism Branch police officers. So you're actually role-playing as police officers today. We are going to give you intelligence that the Counter-Terrorism Branch would likely receive. As soon as you walk into that room and you mention you're going to do a counter-terrorism exercise, I have always felt that some community members sometimes feel, here we go again, the police are out here coming in here to tell us about terrorism.
One of our sources has heard some information about an extreme group that appears to have bought a load of peroxide. I'll let you know more information.
The women are told about a suspected terror cell in their neighbourhood. Playing the role of counter-terrorist officers, they have to decide what to do next.
The gossip hotspot of the...
Would you stop and search people on Nimrod Street?
No,
you wouldn't. Why
It's
not?
still too early in the case
Too early.
for us to do something so drastic.
Because they bought peroxide. In a stupid sense, it's not sufficient information to want to go and arrest somebody.
So what would you do to find out?
News is coming in of 2 explosions at the Central Shopping Mall in Sandford.
Perhaps not surprisingly, the women's softly approach fails. After all, it is a police role-playing exercise. The bombs go off, and the imaginary police officers now have to deal with the aftermath. Once again, the emphasis is on how difficult this response can be.
How many officers are you going to use then for your operation?
We range from 20 to 100 per house.
You're going to use almost 100 officers to arrest 5 people.
Yeah, we have to.
Why?
Because it's a very delicate situation, isn't it? We don't want to do it wrong.
Okay, because one of the criticisms the police often receive is, why did you send in so many officers to arrest one family?
Because usually what is there?
There's a none too subtle message behind the role play. If a community really wants to stop terrorism, they have to share information with the police.
You were saying about how to engage and things like that. I think
it's also try and get communities to understand how important intelligence is, how important it is for communities to come on board and share information with us. It's not about spying on communities. It's about how we can share information and work with each other.
And perception has changed the way how difficult it is to make decisions, because you are dealing with people's lives here.
You have to work that little bit harder to find out more information before you just go barging in.
Where do you think the best intelligence comes from?
The public, the community.
Whilst the government denies that Prevent is about spying, providing information and informing on your neighbours may amount to much the same thing, only the wording may be different.
I'm looking for the community to work much more closely with the police in identifying young people that that they have concerns about in terms of the people that they're mixing with, the sort of websites that they're going onto and the material that they're reading. Now, that information can only come from the community itself.
Could the Muslim community do more?
Could the community in general do more? Yes, I think we all could. And the Muslim community is a part of that, yes.
I'd like to ask Norman Bettison on what basis he's made that judgment. Is there anything that the Muslim community have not done for him to believe that they would not share information? Unless he produces that evidence, then clearly for me that is a policy where you're clearly tarring an entire community with a brush of non-cooperation.
But in whatever terms it's couched, intelligence gathering is the key to stopping attacks on Britain's streets. In Bristol, the local Prevent strategy had only just got underway when the city faced an immediate threat. The story begins not on an inner city housing estate, but in a picture postcard country village. It's easy to stereotype a Muslim extremist or a suicide bomber, but these stereotypes aren't always true. Islamist extremists don't always come from the most deprived areas of our land. This is the village of Frenchhay, just outside Bristol. It could easily be the setting for a Jane Austen costume drama. But in fact, it was the setting for a would-be suicide bomber. Frenchhay was home to Andrew Ibrahim. The family is well off. His Egyptian father is a surgeon at the local hospital, but Ibrahim got into drugs. After being expelled from a number of private schools, Ibrahim ended up on the streets, an addict, homeless, and selling the big issue. Ibrahim was brought up a Christian, but by the time he met Jack Everson, who was also a drug user, he'd converted to Islam. Why do you think he embraced Islam?
I think the possibility of belonging to a communal religion like Islam was very seductive, because he'd been sort of marginalised so much by people in and around the town because of his drug use.
When you got to know him, was he always in Muslim dress?
He would change into sportswear, tracksuits, according to how he perceived himself at the time and how he wanted others to perceive him. And he saw changing his clothes and his style as a means to acceptance.
So he was quite obviously a confused young man.
Yeah, he did a lot of crack cocaine, which is, you know, obviously apparent effects.
Andrew Ibrahim, like Nikki Riley, was a Muslim convert.